It's an honor and a pleasure to introduce someone who has been an integral support for Global Connect since the very beginning. We're all overjoyed as Professor Maurer was appointed Dean of the School of Social Sciences in fall of 2013. Since then, Dean Maurer has transformed the campus into a vibrant, lively, energetic school, and full of new life and ideas. This change could be immediately seen with his one-of-a-kind ideas, such as all the staff and faculty dressing up as Star Trek characters and raising over $5,000 in student scholarships. He has also secured over $2 million in research funding and fostered countless new collaborations. He's the Dean of the School of Social Sciences, an anthropology professor, a law professor, and founder and director of two centers, the Institute for Money, Technology, and Financial Inclusion, and the Intel Science and Technology Center for Social Computing. Not only is he making a positive change on campus, but he has also made a positive impact abroad by providing funds for researchers to study the monetary practices in developing countries and in turn improve economic practices. We are so happy to have him here as our keynote speaker, speaking about our theme, inequality. After his talk, there will be a 15-minute Q&A session available for you to ask any questions that you would like about his talk, so please be thinking about any questions. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to a visionary, a scholar, an administrator, a global leader, Dean Maurer.
Good morning. I'm just a little disturbed by the lack of enthusiasm in this group, so hopefully, you can get some energy levels up by the end of this talk and by the end of the day as you go forth to change the world in a positive way. I'm Bill Maurer. I'm the Dean here of Social Sciences, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I do when I'm not deaning, except that this didn't work. Click. There. Just a quick question. I'm going to talk to you about money. How do we feel about money in general? We like? This is a good thing? Let me just have like a quick show of hands. A quick show of hands. How many of you have a bank account? Damn, okay. How many of you have, okay, now I'm going to get scared if a lot of hands go up. How many of you have a credit card? Okay. How many of you have a debit card? Debit. Okay, great. How many of you have something like a PayPal account? Okay. All right. iTunes? Good. What I'm going to talk to you about today is a key issue in work on poverty alleviation that I think a lot of us here in the States tend not to think about, but that's super important around the world, and that also affects us here in the US, especially in poor communities. I'm going to talk to you about not the lack of money that people have that puts them into poverty, but the kind of access to money that they have, the kind of ways that they're paying, whether they're using cash or a card or something like PayPal or something entirely different, and how that impacts their lives. When we think about poverty, and this is a photograph from some folks in Ethiopia taken by one of the researchers from UC Irvine who goes out into the field and looks at poverty alleviation around the world. When we think about poverty, usually we think that it's about not having enough money. But I want to talk to you about how it's not just about not having enough money, it's about the kind of money you have. Because there are costs and benefits associated with different ways that we pay for things, whether we're using cash, whether we're using a card, whether we even have access to something like a plastic card. Most of the world's poor, and that includes here in the United States, live in a cash-only existence. So if I had been in rural Kenya in a classroom and asked how many of you have a bank account, no hands would go up. If I would say how many of you had a credit card, no hands would go up. If I said how many of you and your parents basically are always dealing in cash and coin, all the hands would go up. That has some pretty significant consequences. If you're living cash only, this or that, can you see what that is? That's a mattress, that's money under the mattress. That's your savings bank. That's not particularly safe, right? Like, I'm a burglar. I break into your house. Where do I go? I look under the mattress. Oh, there's like a box on the mantle. I'll go check and see what's inside of that and take all your money. Not particularly safe to live cash only. This is a guy in Haiti, a photograph taken by one of our researchers here from UC Irvine. For folks in this community who live cash only, this guy is their banker. Who is he? I don't know. He's just some guy with a whole lot of cash, and he'll help us by taking some of our money, holding it safe for us, we think, and then come up to the car window and let us make a withdrawal, so to speak. Does this guy have any supervision or regulation? Probably not. So, you know, for most of the world's poor, they're relying on cash, and they're relying on what we call informal systems, right? Non-formal, informal systems for protecting their cash, for saving it, for hiding it, and for trying to accumulate some assets. We, in contrast, most of us in the developed world, most of you here in this classroom or your parents, have access to a whole range of other possibilities besides cash. I never see the money that comes to me in my paycheck. I never even see my paycheck. I just get a little email saying, woohoo, you got paid. And then I can look in my bank account and see, in fact, there's some money there. But I never actually see the physical, tangible cash. It happens by direct deposit. There are very few bills that I pay, even with writing a check. Almost all that is done online. Most of my transactions, I'm using a credit or a debit card. If I need to do something really big, right, if I'm going to buy a car or buy a house, I'm going to rely on the banks to do that for me using a wire service. But if I'm in a cash-only world, I don't have access to this kind of stuff. I don't have access to these varieties of means of payment. You may think this is sort of a trivial thing, but again, there are costs and risks associated with just living in cash only. There are also costs and risks associated with just living electronically, and I'll go through those just now. So let's think about this a bit. If I have cash or an electronic means of payment, first of all, is the transaction free or not? And by that, what I mean is, if I buy something with cash, if I give you $10, I think we should just demonstrate this right now. Where is my wallet? If I give, okay, I'm just going to do one. I got two. If I need a volunteer. So I'm going to give her $2 here. Now, okay, here's a really dumb question. How much money did she end up with? That's right. Now, let's say that she's a merchant at a store, and I'm going to give her $2 with my credit card. Can you pretend to be a credit card machine? Swipe my card. $2. How much did she get? Does anyone know? What? She gets less. She gets like $1.97. Okay? There's a, cash is basically free for us when we transact it. Electronic mechanisms of payment, all of them come with some kind of fee that's paid to the service provider. So in that instance, I pay her $2. $2 disappears from my account, but she only gets about $1.97. The 3 cents go to whatever card company I just used, to MasterCard. Hooray for MasterCard for taking those 3 cents. Why would she accept credit cards, given that she has to pay a little bit of money for each transaction? Why would she accept it? Right, it's faster, it's easier, it generates records for her, right? And it drives foot traffic. If I know that I can pay with my card and I don't have any cash in my wallet, well, that's going to bring me into her store compared to the guy who only accepts cash. But this is an important thing. If you're really poor, if you're a poor merchant, if you're a poor person, cash kind of wins here. It's free. I give $2, you get $2, the end. The other thing with cash that's sort of a plus and a minus is with cash, if I've got it in my wallet, that's all there needs to be. I don't need to have an account. I don't need to have a bank. I don't need to have any relationship with a credit card company or anything like that. There's no account. Whereas for all electronic forms of payment, all electronic or digital money, you need to have an account. Now, is that good or bad? Well, if you, if you don't have an account, there's a little bit of a risk in using cash, because let's say something goes wrong. So I just gave her $2. And then what if she comes to me and says, hey, wait a minute, you only gave me 1? And I'm like, no, I didn't, I gave you 2. She hides one of them in her pocket because she's a very untrustworthy person and says, no, look, I only have one. I have absolutely no recourse. There's no electronic record of that transaction. It's just us and whoever witnessed us doing that transaction. That's not particularly safe, right? Not particularly safe for me. If there's an account somewhere, if there's Visa or MasterCard somewhere in the background, even though it's charging her 3 cents, it's giving each of us a little bit of a protection when we make that transaction, right? There's a record. There's an electronic record that thing took place. Now, I wrote here, safe, and then I qualified it sort of safe, because you all are familiar with all kinds of instances of credit card and debit card fraud, and the Target data breach that took place where, bad people got all of our credit card information over the holiday break this year, but sort of safer than dealing in a world without accounts and without transactions. There's all kinds of other hidden costs, too, that we don't think about of living cash only. This is another photograph. This is in South Sudan, where one of our researchers did work looking at these informal money traders. So you've got US dollars, you've got Kenyan shillings, you've got South Sudanese money. You don't have a bank, but you need to convert. What do? You rely on these guys. Well, that's really great, but there's no guarantee that these guys are giving you a fair exchange rate. They might be charging you. They might be taking like 10, 20, even 30% off the top of the transaction for the trouble. There's all kinds of costs to cash like this. If I lose it, it's just gone, right? If I live in a cash-only world and I don't have a bank account and I've just got a wad of bills under my mattress and whatever, I lose them, or I drop some along the way. And this is a real thing, okay? This is not actually, this is funny, but it's not that funny. An animal eats it, okay? We have all kinds of instances around the world, especially in the developing world, of vermin, like mice and rats, nibbling away at your stashes of bills that you have hidden in a gourd or something in your backyard. And this is again a for real story in places in India and Sri Lanka, of elephants breaking into you have like a grain silo where you keep your grain, and that's also a great place to hide all your money, right? Bundle it up in a cloth, hide it in the grain. That's terrific until a hungry elephant comes by and is like, oh, there's tasty stuff in there, I'm going to eat it. An elephant is big and relatively indiscriminate. It just shovels stuff into its mouth, and there goes your life savings, okay? So cash is subject to loss in a way that account-based money isn't. To theft, it's really easy to steal. All you got to do is steal my wallet and you have all my cash. I can shut down my cards in probably 15 minutes as long as I still have my phone, but the cash is gone forever. It's hard to transport. You end up relying on informal money services, by which I mean kind of the guy in the street who's going to help you out, but who's probably also going to take advantage of you. And you may also end up paying additional fees even if you don't realize you're doing it. That's a particular case here in the United States among poor people who don't have bank accounts, but then rely on things like pawn shops or check cashing outlets when they get their paycheck, right? Go to a check cashing place or a pawn shop to get their money, and out off the top comes a whole bunch of that. And there you go. There's our check cashing outlet just up north from here. And I think it says like no something fees, but ha 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 ha, buyer beware. I just for in the U.S., because this is not just a problem in the global South, this is a problem right here. In the U.S., the New Yorker magazine did a study of the fees paid based on your income bracket to access cash, right? Either just to use if I'm rich. To use an ATM card, I pay a little bit of a fee to get my money out if I want cash. If I'm poor and I'm going to a check cashing outlet or a pawn shop, how much it costs me. And you see that the burden of fees to deal in cash falls disproportionately on the poor. So what do we do about this kind of problem? What do we do about the problem of cash? Well, the United Nations in 2006 issued a global call to financial organizations, the philanthropic community, and a whole bunch of world governments, and said, we need to have what they called go back there. We need to have what they called a financial inclusion agenda. We need to have some way of including the world's poor in the formal financial institutions that serve everybody else and that give everybody else the protections that you get basically from having an account. from having an electronic means of dealing with your money. So I just put up here, you can read this at your leisure, what the UN's bullet points. They said that what we want is access at a reasonable cost for all households to a full range of financial services, including savings or deposit, payment and transfer, credit and insurance, safe and sound institutions, guaranteed by clear regulation, financial institutional stability, and competition to ensure choice and affordability. So the UN said we really need to have a financial inclusion agenda. We really need to start dealing with the problems that poor people have when they're only dealing in a cash economy. Now, again, coming back to the US, this is a huge problem right here. So in the United States, we've got 43 million underbanked Americans who underbanked means they have a bank account, but basically they're not using it. They're relying on a pawn shop or a check cashing outlet or a payday loan to make ends meet, to get their money when they need to pay their bills and so forth. And we have fully 17 million unbanked people in this country, adults with no access to financial services at all. Okay? It's astounding that one of the richest countries in the world would have so many people who have fallen out of the financial sector. Globally, 2.5 billion are under or un. So how do you kind of solve this problem? What are some innovative solutions to try to bring formal financial services to poor people in a way that they can afford, in a way that's going to give them all the benefits that I enjoy by having things like direct deposit and being able to pay with my credit card? How do we do it, especially when we know the banks are probably not going to play along, right? Why doesn't a bank give a crap about a poor person? They don't have any money, right? If I'm the bank, I'm not gonna go through all this trouble and spend all this money to provide you guys with services when you only have maybe $100 in a year. I'm gonna focus on the rich guys, right? Not the poor guys. So what can we do? Well, look, one thing you can do is say, forget the banks, let's leverage another network. What other kind of institution do we have that has the reach and the scale and that's already accessible to the bulk of the world's poor? That's the phone. And this is the kind of phone that most people in the world still carry around today. They don't have an iPhone or an Android. Still, the phone that's in most people's hands on this planet is a dumb, simple Nokia feature phone like that. And over 80% of the world's population today has access to both a rechargeable phone and a service. So one of the things that a lot of corporations and a lot of foundations, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that supported my work, one of the things they've been experimenting with is, can we use the phone to carry financial data? Can we use the phone as a kind of, almost like a kind of electronic money system instead of the bank? Can we take what people are already doing with their mobile phones and layer another set of features on top of it, piggyback stuff on top of it, and provide people with a new kind of digital money that way? Now, I don't know, does any of you have a prepaid phone where you like top up with minutes? Yay, one person, so you know what this is. But this is a sort of relatively unfamiliar thing to some people in this country, but in most of the world, you don't get your phone bill every month and ask your parents to pay it. In most of the world, what you do is you have a phone, and there's no subscription, there's no monthly bill, there's no nothing, right? What you do is you go to a store, go to a kiosk, go to a person who will sell you minutes. And usually the way this works is you pay like $5 and you get a little card and you scratch off the scratchy stuff, like on a lottery card or whatever, scratch off that stuff. There's a secret code there. You enter it into your phone. And what happens is your phone then gets loaded up with $5 of credits that you can use for talk and text. Most mobile phones work this way. So, and I just explained exactly what happened there. You bring cash, load it up or top up your phone. The credits are held in the cloud, right? They're not actually in the phone. They're basically being held by the computer servers that lie behind the phone company. The account is actually linked to the SIM card, the little chip inside your phone, not to you. That becomes important in a minute. And also, When you go to top up your phone, you just show up with money and that's it. You buy the card. You don't even have to show your phone, right? You just go with your cash, buy a little scratcher card, scratch the stuff off at your leisure, enter the secret code into your phone, and you've got money. The reason I put this there is that this is really different from a bank, right? In a bank, you go to do something, you need to show some ID. Can you all think of what the problem is with showing ID if you're poor? Usually you don't even have one, right? So maybe you were born and your birth never got registered, so you don't have a birth certificate. Maybe maybe in your country there's a fee for registering to get a provincial or community ID. You don't have it, right? So this is great if you're in that condition. Now, what happened, and this is around sort of 2008, 2009, is some companies and some foundations were like, we can take that prepaid model and just call phone credits, let's just call it money, because it is money anyway, right? Instead of saying to people, you're going to buy credits to top up your phone so that you can talk, let's do the exact same procedure. I go to the store, I hand over cash, you give me a card, I enter the code into my number, and now let's say it's not credits, it's money. And now let's let people use that money however they want. Not just to call or text people or play a game, but to go to a store, say, and tap onto my phone, blah, 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 I have $2, I'm now going to transfer $2 to your phone and pay with things that way. M-PESA is a service now in Kenya. It's used by almost everybody in the country. It's remarkable how much this has taken off. And this is one of their first billboards. And you see the idea where here's this guy, he has nice clothes, he probably lives in the city, he has a good job. Here's his mother back in the village, there's his old father with the cow. And look at how happy she is. Isn't that sweet? Because he's thinking of her and he's like, oh, I'll send mom some money. He doesn't have to get cash. He doesn't have to take the cash and put it in an envelope and give it to a friend to go on the train to get to the countryside where the friend might get mugged or the friend might take some of it himself and keep it for himself in his pocket. All he has to do is sit there with his phone and send the money to his mom. This was a revolution in Kenya, and this is now taking off around the world. There are these kinds of so-called mobile money services in about 100 countries all over the world that are basically serving as a kind of mini bank account for poor people. So they get all the benefits that you get from having electronic transactions. You have the account, you have the security. It's hard to steal unless you lose your phone, but even then, there's a PIN, so if someone steals your phone, you're pretty safe. All those benefits and fewer of the risks. So there's a lot of possibilities that this holds. And some of the work that I've been doing here and with one of the institutes that Jessica mentioned has been thinking about these possibilities. It provides a low-cost sort of piggy bank on a phone to poor people. The funds are in the cloud. So if I get mugged or pickpocketed, I'm basically safe. It's relatively accessible because pretty much everyone has a phone or access to a phone. Now, I say they have a phone or access to a phone. In many parts of the developing world, I might not have a phone, but you do, or my sister does, or my brother does, or my cousin does, and I can use that phone when I need to get stuff done. So everyone's got access. It's way cheaper, just order of magnitude cheaper than having a bank account or using a courier, just a friend or a kind of semi-professional person who will carry money to relatives for you. And another thing is this, right? People love their phones and kind of hate the banks. The banks are associated with rich people. The banks are associated with corruption. The banks caused the global financial crisis. But my phone makes me happy because I talk to my friends on my phone, and it's this sort of point of connection to other people. And what I'm doing, if I'm M-PESA, if I'm this company offering this service, I'm saying, look, I know you love your phone. I know you use it for everything. You can use it for money too, and it's going to provide you a whole bunch of benefits if you do. There are, however, some problems. Guess what? Like all other forms of electronic payment, things like M-PESA, these mobile services, charge fees on every transaction. So when I give you $2, you're not really getting $2, you're getting like $1.99. It's actually not that bad. You're getting 1.99999 or something like that. So it's tiny, tiny, tiny fees. But if you're very poor, that kind of stuff can add up. Also, if you're poor, if maybe you're illiterate or you're innumerate, can't deal with numbers, you might see a flyer next to the place where you're basically handing over your cash to get these electronic credits. You might see a flyer saying, here's what the fees are, and then it will have a long, complicated table. But I can't read, and I can't do math, so that's all like invisible to me, right? So that's a problem. There are new safety issues that come up. So as I said, in places where people share one phone, that's totally great because it gives me access if I don't have my own. But let's say it's like Jessica. How do I know I can really trust her if all of a sudden she has access to my, my M-PESA account? Right? Like, she's my friend and she would never do anything to hurt me. But maybe like one day she's like, gosh, I really wish I had like $5. Oh, I'll look at Bill's account in my phone, and then I'll send it to buy something or whatever. This is a huge deal, and you really can't understate this. As we all know, our phone's battery dies, like by the end of the day, usually. What if we have no place to charge it up? What if we don't have a built-out electrical grid in the country where we're living or the community where we are? And what if there's a network failure? Now here, like, we get irritated when a call is dropped. Imagine if you're in the middle of paying someone $10 and all you have is $50 in the world and the signal drops. That really sucks, right? Also, these are phone companies, not banks. And I know that like banks are bad sometimes, but in some ways phone companies are worse. They're unbelievably lightly regulated. There's hardly any law around things like if I load up credits into my phone and the phone company goes bankrupt, do I still have access to that money? Who gets that money? Where does it live? And another thing is, if we're setting up a kind of quasi-financial system where there's no requirement to use identity documents to prove who I am, what are some of the risks in that? We got money transiting electronically through the phone network, and no one knows who anyone is. No government official or regulator or policeman can know who anybody is. No identity can open the door to all kinds of crime, right? To everything from kind of simple forms of fraud to criminal money laundering to even sending lots and lots of tiny transactions to your local terrorist network, right? So that's not good. So what we've been doing here, and when I say we, I mean me plus a network of about 100 researchers who are associated with the institute that I direct, is, and this is the website of our institute, is we're trying to see where these mobile money services have been rolled out around the world, what's actually happening. We're trying to get beyond the marketing hype that these companies have. We're trying to drill down really at the everyday level of local people. How are they using these things? How are they not using these things? Here is our mission: to support research on money and technology among the world's poorest, to create a community of practice and inquiry into the everyday uses and meanings of money, as well as the technological infrastructures being developed for money, right? Think if you can sort of take yourself back in time to like the 1940s and 1950s in the United States when there were no credit cards, right? It was basically checks and cash. But from around 1948 on, we in this country have built out a whole series of electronic networks to help us handle our money. That hasn't happened in much of the developing world. It's probably not gonna happen in much of the developing world in the same way that it happened here because of the costs. But with the mobile network, something that's already there, something that's a lot cheaper to set up, there's some real possibilities. That's what we're trying to understand. So we're trying to understand the risks and benefits. We're trying to understand why people start using these things and how they start using these things. And we're trying to understand the regulations and legal issues. It's a huge task. And as I said, there's about 100 countries that have these services in them right now. Most of them have multiple of these services. So there'll be like M-PESA and then another competitor and so forth across all regions of the globe, across all kinds of religious and ethnic divides where people face particular problems, across issues of ability and disability. So, it's totally great to be able to access your money on your phone, but what if you're blind, right? That's like a big deal, especially in parts of the world where a lot of people, because of vitamin deficiencies or whatever, are visually impaired. So I will conclude there. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of your day.